Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here. As has been stated, I am Dr. Dominique Harrison. I describe myself as a tech equity expert, so I'm really excited to be here today to interview Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel. Thank you for joining us again for this conversation. This discussion will be centered on various technology policy topics affecting Black communities. Chairwoman Rosenworcel works to promote greater opportunity, accessibility, and affordability in our communication services in order to ensure that all Americans get a fair shot at 21st century success. She believes strong communication markets can foster economic growth and security, enhance digital aid opportunity, and enrich our civic life. The Chairwoman brings over 2 decades of communication policy experience and public service to the FCC. Thank you for joining us today, and we're excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Dominique, and the Joint Center. It's a real privilege to be here.
So let's start off by kind of getting an understanding of the Federal Communications Commission. As the leader of the FCC, what are the key roles and responsibility at the Commission?
Well, I might be biased, but I think the work of the Federal Communications Commission is really important. We do work that affects broadcasting, broadband, a wireless service you get on your phones that are probably with you now, and if they're not, you're not listening to me, you're wondering where you left it. We also deal with the satellites in our skies. You can't go through the day without using communications. It's about 1/6 of the US economy, and the policies we make have real impact on the lives of people in this country because we get to decide what digital age technologies reach people, how fast they reach different communities, and we are keenly aware that we've got work to do to make sure they reach everyone everywhere in this country.
Thank you for providing a baseline of what the FCC does. And, in your view, how does the FCC's mission of ensuring access to reliable communication services and promoting innovation in the communications sector affect Black communities?
Oh my gosh, when you look at technology, it's painfully clear that we've got some communities that are not participating in its creation. And when you look at communications infrastructure, we know that there are communities that have been underserved and overlooked. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the job of the FCC to make sure that those technologies and that infrastructure reaches everyone everywhere. And that's not like some radical idea. If you go back and look at the statute that created the FCC in 1934, right there in the first sentence, it talks about nationwide, worldwide communications that reaches everyone without regard to race, ethnicity, religion. The idea is really fundamental. These are the networks that connect us all, and these networks are more powerful when every one of us can operate as a node on them.
Do you want to speak a little bit to also your work with, establishing the Communications Equity and Diversity Council and just how important that is? I served as the Digital Inclusion and Empowerment chair of one of the working groups, but it's a very important space where many of these discussions take place.
Yeah. Look, there are a lot of task forces you can serve on in Washington where it's like an honorary title. You show up, you have a coffee and a donut, and then you listen for a few speeches. The FCC does not run a lot of those task forces. We put people to work. And our Communications Equity and Diversity Council, I know there's you here, you're all other members here. Yeah. We have asked them to take on some of the most important topics that are before us today. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, one of those really big bills that Congress passed not that long ago during the height of the COVID pandemic, Congress tasked us with trying to define digital discrimination, trying to come up with a complaint process for communities in this country that feel left behind. And we took a look at this law and very quickly said, we've got a lot of experts. And so we tasked the Communications Equity and Diversity Council with identifying good and practical state and local policies nationwide that could inform our efforts with doing studies And I have to say, we are just benefited from the diversity of that community and the hard work they do. I think that council has been one of our most productive. And next month, mark your calendars, November 15th, we're going to be issuing the first ever rules at the FCC on digital discrimination. I should say preventing digital discrimination. And a lot of that's informed by the work of the Communications and Equity and Diversity Council. So thank you for your service, for those of you who are here.
Yes, and we'll actually get into that topic in a little moment, but I will say that it was a lot of work, and it was great working alongside John Gantt. I mean, we were meeting 3 times a week to really dig into the issues to ensure what we were presenting to the chairwoman was going to be taken seriously and really advanced to protect our communities and provide more access. So let's dig into some topics around tech policy that we should get some updates on. Net neutrality, a lot went on today if folks have been following the news, and I'll just set a baseline for that topic. Net neutrality is a principle that an ISP, internet service provider, has to provide access to all sites, content, and applications at the same speed under the same conditions without blocking or giving preference to any content. And today, the Commission voted to move forward on a proposal to restore open internet rules. These rules would change how broadband internet service is classified, shifting it from being treated as an information service to a telecom service under Title II of the Communications Act. So, Chairwoman, could you explain the main advantages and the potential issues of making this change, especially in terms of protecting fair and equal access to the internet for all Americans?
Yeah, we're going to the weeds now. Let me just start by saying this. There was a time when broadband was nice to have, but it's now need to have for everyone, everywhere. Broadband is an essential service. If you don't have access to it, you don't have a fair shot of success in the 21st century. So if we've got people, households, or communities that don't have access to it, we've got to address that. But we've also got to address the fact that we need this access to be fast, open, and fair. And when the Federal Communications Commission has oversight over broadband, we're able to do that. And net neutrality itself is a recognition that a lot of people in this country may not have a choice of broadband provider. There might only be one provider that goes to their home. So if that provider decides they want to favor some websites or shut off some content on the internet, nothing stops them from doing it. Now, we could trust them. But I think the better practice is to set up a national policy that says your broadband provider, which is your gatekeeper to the internet, can't block websites, throttle or slow down services, or engage in paid prioritization, pay-for-play activity, or censor content online. That's how you preserve an open web for everyone. Now, the FCC had these rules in place during the Obama administration. During the Trump administration, the agency took them away. I think the decision to take them away put the agency on the wrong side of history, the wrong side of the law, the wrong side of the American people. Today, 80% of the public supports net neutrality. And in the aftermath of the pandemic, which has proved just how essential that service is, we're going to put those rules back in place. We're going to start a proceeding to have conversations about what they should look like. And that all kicked off at the agency earlier this morning, and I'm glad we got it started.
And congratulations on making that happen. On the topic of broadband and the Black digital divide, I had the honor of formerly serving as Director of Technology Policy, and the new Director of Technology Policy is here, Danielle. While here, we did some work and research on the digital divide and what we described as the Black rural South. And there's some, kind of amazing data around there in terms of the lack of access and why it's so important in broadband internet access for folks to, advance in various areas. And of course, we learned about all the setbacks during the pandemic in terms of those who did not have access and what that meant for their lives. So, Chairwoman Rosenworcel, the FCC's recent update to the national broadband maps is a promising development in enhancing broadband data accuracy. This can often feel a bit technical, but can you explain to our audience the importance of the broadband data maps?
Of course. Years ago, I worked for Senator Inouye, who used to say, you can't manage what you don't measure. And when I got to the FCC, it became really apparent we weren't measuring where broadband was and wasn't. We didn't have any national accounting of where there was service in the ground and wireless service in our skies. We kind of maybe sort of knew, but we had some data based on census blocks, census tracts. That's not granular, it's not good enough. So when I got there, we started a really big effort to try to know on a household-by-household basis in the United States what service is available where. We've done that for wired and wireless. We have now set up maps that get updated every 6 months. The carriers provide data to us, telling us where they provide service, but then we turn around to states, to cities, to individuals, and say, hey, does this look right to you? Because, you know, it's something you realize real fast in Washington. People know a lot more about what's happening in their own backyard than you do. And so we have all sorts of feedback that's been flowing in. And we use that feedback to try to understand where our maps are wrong and what needs to be changed. So this is an iterative process. But we've been able to tell with pinpoint accuracy some more than 8 million households that don't have wired broadband in the United States today. And now, when we have funds from Congress to address that like never before, well, like never before, we'll be able to address it by sending them to the right places. So some of the communities you mentioned, which historically have been left behind, especially in the Black South, have a fighting shot of taking those funds and actually changing the infrastructure that's available in their communities. So I'm really proud of this mapping effort. I actually encourage everyone here to go look up your own address on the FCC website. If you think it's not right, you let us know. We are now in the business of making sure that we measure very carefully where broadband is and is not in this country, and that policymakers in Washington, at the state and local level, can use this as a tool to help us get service everywhere and identify communities that have been discriminated against, where we're going to have to remedy that discrimination.
And I just wanted to double down on the fact that how much data is so important to organizations like the Joint Center, because when we go into trying to develop research, the research questions, we need to gather that data and see and understand what does it mean for Black communities across the United States. And then we are able to advance policy solutions that address those challenges, and we have the data to back it up to share with congressional members. And so this is a great opportunity for folks to use the data in new ways to ensure that broadband is being developed in different parts of the country and not just relying solely on the information by private sector companies.
Yeah, and I can't say that enough. Like we don't have enough people or time to go look at this data and look for patterns. But we're going to look to people like the Joint Center to look at it and tell us what you see, because that can really inform national policy. And I just think that this information is a really profound tool for digital equity going forward.
I want to stay on this thread for a little bit and just talk a little bit about some of the actions that were taken today as it relates to E-rate, and talking about the importance of broadband in children and in schools, and how what your decision today can do for those communities.
Yeah, I love talking about this. I'm the first mom to run the FCC, so we're going there. E-rate is the nation's largest program to help get broadband to schools and libraries. It's not run by the Department of Education, it's actually run by the FCC. And here's another crazy thing. Congress set it up in the Telecommunications Act of 1996. I don't know if you remember 1996, but I had an AOL account and thought it was cool. Like, That's when we called the internet the information superhighway. I mean, but Congress was way ahead of the curve and saw this was a really extraordinary tool to help with learning. And E-rate has funded classrooms in every state in this country. If you are from a community that is low income, the E-rate support goes up. If you're from a community that is rural, the E-rate support goes up. It is designed to create a level of equitable internet access in our nation's schools, and we've been working on it now for about a quarter of a century. But today we did something different. I've spent a lot of time traveling around the country. The best part of this job is get out of Washington. And I've spent time in rural communities. And everywhere you go to a school in a rural community, you meet some teacher who tells you about some kid who is struggling to get their homework done because they don't have internet access at home. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who sit outside the fast food restaurant with a laptop perched on their knees. Yep. They're the ones who are at the school parking lot after the final bell rung because that's the only place they get the signal they need to do their nightly assignments. And in rural communities in California, Vermont, and New Mexico, I have now seen schools that put Wi-Fi on their school buses. Because in rural communities, kids spend a lot of time on school buses. Mm-hmm. They spend an hour going to school in the morning and then an hour to come back at night. And if they play on a sports team like the football team, there's another hour to go play a neighboring school and another hour to come back. So what I learned from those communities is we can turn that ride time into connected time for homework. Mm-hmm. We could put Wi-Fi routers on those school buses. So those kids who are most likely to live in rural communities where they don't have broadband or their parents can't afford it at home, can turn that ride time into connected time for schoolwork. Create a little bit more equity for them when they do their homework. So today the FCC decided nationwide the E-rate program would support Wi-Fi on school buses. And while net neutrality is getting all the attention, it's like the hog that steals the show. I think what we're doing to put Wi-Fi on school buses is quietly revolutionary, and it is a commitment to equity and education that I think is really important.
Very, very important, yeah. And again, the report that talks about broadband in the rural South talks about these issues around black and brown students who have lack of internet in those communities and just how important it is to have a Wi-Fi connection on a school bus. So thank you for chatting about that. All right, so I want to talk about a hot topic, digital discrimination, only because Dr. John Gant and I have worked really hard on the Communications Equity and Diversity Council working group to talk about what it is and then how do you prevent it. So we worked alongside a diversity of folks across private and nonprofit and those who work at anchor institutions. And we were given the charge by Chairwoman Rosenworcel, although it came down from Congress in the Infrastructure Act. But, the IIJA, which is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, requires the FCC to issue rules to aid equal access to broadband internet services and to prevent digital discrimination of access based on income level, race, ethnicity, color, religion, or national origin. The Joint Center has been involved in ensuring that black communities, and particularly those in the black rural South, do not face digital discrimination. Could you update our audience on what you've learned through the process of developing solutions?
Well, the first thing I'm worried is that people in this crowd aren't going to want to serve on our committees anymore.
Oh, no.
We're telling
serve.
How much work it is. But we really need input from people who don't spend morning, noon, and night at the FCC, and this is one of those areas. Yeah. It's pretty extraordinary what Congress asked us to do. There were 3 tasks in the broadband infrastructure law. Mm-hmm. The first, identify those state and local policies that are models. Yes. Right? Look around, figure out what our biggest cities and smallest towns are doing. Do some of them have really good ideas? How do we lift those up? And then the next thing is they ask us to define digital discrimination. Mm-hmm. What does it mean? What does it look like? what intent's involved, what disparate impact might be involved. And then it asked us to set up a complaint process so that individuals and communities have a way to seek remedy. It's a really profound set of duties, and we really wanted to get it right. So we've been taking lots of incoming from the council, and we've actually brought in some really talented civil rights attorneys to run this process for us. We also went around the country and held fora on this in Los Angeles, in Baltimore, we were in Topeka, we were in New York City. We've been going around and talking to people, because when you talk to people in the community where you live, you get a lot more candor than if you bring them to Washington, D.C. and put them in a conference room. And my hope is that we are going to deliver on the promise of what Congress asked us to do in a way that provides redress for communities that feel like they haven't been given a fair shot in the digital age, and puts companies on notice that they have to pay attention to this. And when you combine this initiative with what we're doing with mapping, I think we're going to have more tools to make that happen. But again, put it on your calendar, November 15th. We are going to be announcing the vote on our effort to prevent digital discrimination. And then, of course, any rules you develop are only as good as the follow-through. So we're going to count on people here at the Joint Center and others to keep us on our toes, to pay attention to these issues and make sure we use those new tools in ways that help make access to the necessary tools of the digital age more equitable.
Yeah, you know, I just wanted to emphasize how important this work is, and you know, the fact that there are many communities across the United States in which continue to have no internet access or have slow speeds, right? And it could, what we, you know, found in some of our research is that might be connected to your zip code. It might have legacies of housing discrimination. So based upon where you live, you get more access to the internet at faster speeds and are capable to do more activities online. And so it is an important topic to be discussing and finding solutions to ensure that everybody, as we've stated before, and the Chairwoman has stated, has equal access across the United States. So I'm really excited to see what the rules are and how we can move forward on this space. All right, so I want to jump over to another topic in the tech policy space, which is privacy and data protection. The FCC recently created a privacy and data protection task force to address the growing concerns about the collection and use of personal data by telecommunications companies and other technology companies. What are the specific goals of the task force, and how will the FCC ensure that the task force work is inclusive of the unique privacy and data protection challenges facing Black communities?
Yeah, we've done a lot of different work over the years on privacy policy at the FCC, so I brought it together in a team that's being run by Loyan Igal, who runs our Enforcement Bureau. And the goal was to make sure that we think about this in a comprehensive way. When I took over, I wrote all 15 of the largest providers in this country, and I was like, what's your privacy policy? It just occurred to me nobody had ever asked before. And then we published all that data. And what we've done since is we've tried to identify areas where our statute provides us with authority that we think are problems that need to be addressed. We have outstanding at the agency right now an enforcement action on wireless location data. Just think about it, those phones you have, your carrier knows where you are anytime you go somewhere. I don't want them selling that data off to the highest bidder. Think about the vulnerability to theft, national security, domestic violence. So we have an enforcement action to make sure they don't do that. We also have an ongoing proceeding under the Safe Connections Act. We're going to make sure that survivors of domestic violence in this country can separate from their family plans and do it in a private and secure fashion so they can move on with their lives. We're spending a lot of time with groups that work on domestic violence to understand how to do this well and what vocabulary to use to make sure it's private. We also are now working on SIM swapping fraud. SIMs authenticate who you are in your phones. Some bad actors might try to call up a wireless company, try to get them to transfer your SIM to theirs. They'll take advantage of two-factor authentication and take over your social media accounts, or more likely, drain your bank account. So we're trying to put new rules in place for that too. So what happens is you realize privacy is just an evolving area that requires us thinking constantly about which communities are being scammed, who's most affected. Are there ways we can take the policies in the law and extend them so that they give people a little more security in the digital world? And it's an area where we're open to ideas from the Joint Center and otherwise. Where you see vulnerabilities, let us know, because we'll look at the law and find out if there's a way to address them.
Really great work to see that the FCC is looking into those areas, especially as topics around AI have risen and people are talking about and excited about some of the challenges there. But that definitely relates to privacy and how your data is used, if it is sold, and such like that. So glad to see that you all are working on those things. In the realm of taking advantage of consumers and communities, I want to talk about robocalls. And Black Americans are disproportionately targeted by robocall scams. For instance, we know that people orchestrated robocall schemes in the 2020 to target Black neighborhoods with false claims about the legitimacy of mail-in ballots. And what's even more alarming is that 40% of Black and Latino American adults have been targeted by online scams and fraud, according to a survey by AARP. Going into the 2024 election year, how is the FCC planning to address this issue, and how can it work best to protect Black Americans from robocall scams?
Everyone doesn't like robocalls. Nobody wants this junk on the line. It is destroying trust in communications. But scam artists, they are creative and they are nimble, and every time we shut down one fraud, they find another one. But we've been doing more in the last 2 years than at any point in our history. We made sure that every single provider of voice calling uses stir-shaken technology, which helps authentication on our networks, so you are who you say you are. We set up a robocall mitigation database where we made clear if the company's not on this database, you can't accept a call from them. We also have taken a lot of enforcement actions. We shut down a big auto warranty scam. There was a time when everyone was getting a call about your auto warranty. It doesn't happen anymore. We shut down a scam on student loans, which is also a really vile effort. And many of these efforts to shut down these specific scams have been the byproduct of new partnerships we've developed. I now have a memorandum of understanding with 47 different state attorneys general. Because what we've done is we said, when you find fraud problems affecting a specific community, you come to us, because while you might have to go after the fraud, I might be able to see technically what's happening on the network and use our policies and rules and laws to shut it down at the same time. And in fact, working together with the Ohio Attorney General, we were able to shut down the particular scam you referenced, which was an effort to maliciously redirect people who live in Black communities with respect to where they vote in the last election. So we're on guard for this stuff. We got more partners than ever before. We got more enforcement than ever before. We've got more technology than ever before. But boy, these people, they just don't stop. So we are just going to have to keep on using our tools, and then we're going to have to go to Congress and continue to ask for new ones.
Random question, but is your agency responsible for, when your phone rings and you see that number that says scam likely, is that kind of connected to the work?
Yeah, that means that that uses that technology stir shaken that's on the line to basically say, yeah, we don't trust this, we can't authenticate this call.
ignore.
Yeah, you should. You should.
Yeah.
Tell your parents. I'm less worried about everyone here. I'm worried about your parents. But it is nonstop.
Yeah.
And we've got to keep at it. But I'm particularly interested in those kind of specific scams I mentioned to you. Ones that target communities. Student loans.
Yeah.
I mean, this is some vile stuff. If you hear about it, you let us know. And you know why? Because if we start hearing about it from everyone, we know we have a national issue. Mm-hmm. And if we start hearing about it coming from a collective group of states, we're going to go to those state attorneys general. We've built an army to try to take on this stuff. And like anyone else in the military, I want to use our resources.
Yes. So I want to change the topic to a really great question that was written, and it's about maternal health. According to the CDC, Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women. And the FCC recently approved, that was today, a new mapping initiative to empower academics, public health professionals, and other stakeholders to better understand how maternal health outcomes intersect with internet access. If you think about, again, during the pandemic, folks had to stay at home. If you had a doctor's appointment, or those actually who live in the rural South, to travel to a hospital, many of which are shutting down, is a hard effort, especially if you don't have transportation. So one of the ways in which to receive support, medical support, is through telehealth. That is, being able to see your doctor through your mobile device or computer. So this topic is particularly important. How do these two issues relate, maternal health and internet access, and what actions does the FCC hope will come as a result of this work?
Well, let's start here. I already told you I'm a mom. I'm the first mom to lead the FCC in history. I'm the first woman to do it permanently in history. It took 9 decades, but I know we don't have time. We're going to get things done. And today we voted on an inquiry involving maternal health. We got a crisis in this country. The United States is the only industrialized place where maternal mortality is rising. And for Black women and women who live in rural America, this situation's untenable. Yeah. We should be screaming from the rooftops. How can it be in the United States of America it's this unsafe to give birth and to be pregnant? Now, I've spent time with really impressive folks at hospitals in Arkansas and Minnesota, and what I've learned from them is that most pregnancy-related deaths are preventable. Mm-hmm. Careful monitoring during pregnancy can help. And that monitoring takes a lot of time out of people's days. Get to that appointment, get back, get childcare, get off from your job. But if we were able to convert that to telemedicine appointments, where we sent that mom-to-be devices to manage their care and measure it while they spoke on a screen to a healthcare provider, we could make it a lot easier. We could catch things like preeclampsia that cause death. We could catch it early. So this is something I think where we have a lot of opportunity. And the FCC has long mapped where broadband is and is not. But now, working with some colleagues at the Centers for Disease Control, we've been able to add in to our maps these overlays about maternal age, maternal mortality, severe maternal morbidity. And we've now made it all public. The goal is to push it to as many health policy experts as possible and say, look at this. What do these patterns tell us? What can we do now with telemedicine, insurance provision, rural healthcare providers to start attacking this problem? Because the current state is not acceptable. And if you think like the FCC is really far from where these issues are, no, I think it's everyone's responsibility to fix this. It is not acceptable, the state of maternal mortality in the United States of America. And so I had the FCC vote on an inquiry on this, which we got bipartisan support for from front to back. But again, I'm the first mother that's been there, and I've been relentless about this for a while, so I think I shamed my male colleagues into joining. Right, but no shame for that. Let's make sure that we do something to address this. And based on what I've seen, I'm pretty convinced that telemedicine and broadband access can play a positive role.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of studies who were, talking about how broadband is a social determinant of health, just because access is so paramount. When you think about the daily activities that we do online and our access to reach folks who have information and can steer us in the right direction to advance the different kind of things that we want to get done in our lives. So really glad about the work being done there. It's interesting that you mention, being a woman and being a mom, and I think that it's so important to have that kind of diversity in a number of fields, right? When you have diversity of thought, you have different perspectives that get to make, that have ideas, right? That can move different kinds of work forward, because you have different people commenting on the maybe opportunities and challenges of an area. And one of the Joint Center's major initiatives is ensuring diversity among leaders at the highest level of government decision making. And so could you talk a bit about the importance of having a diverse team at the FCC and how that affects decision making when we think about all of these issues we've been discussing today?
Well, this is easy. Well, first of all, I'm going to call out my staff who are here. Who are probably, they're giving me grimaces right now. But there's Narda Jones, the Chief of Staff of the agency. And Paloma Perez, who runs press for the agency. And you already know I'm the first woman to lead the agency permanently. And I've spent my entire life working in technology. And in almost every environment, I've been the only woman in the room. Mm-hmm. I wear really high heels out of habit because I don't want to be the shortest person in any conversation. I testify before Congress with both arms out here, so I take up more space.
Yeah.
And then I get the privilege of running this agency. And the first thing I think is, I don't want it to look like what it did before.
Right.
That if I want the future to look different, we're going to start right now. And I just feel that we don't have much time. We should all be impatient. That leadership in this country should look like this country. And it's incumbent on everyone who has the power to bring people along to think about that all the time. Mm-hmm. I always get asked, how did you get where you are? What did you go on? And then, people always looking for ways to move on to the next. But I think if you made it to this room and you're sitting at a table here at an event for the Joint Center, you're already a leader. So while you're looking on to the next, I would just say, look behind you. It's just as important to be a sponsor, to be a mentor, and help bring someone else along. Because I'm really tired of being the only woman in the room. I'm sure you're really tired of being the only in the room, and we gotta lock arms and do something about it. Not in the future, not with some pipeline thing for maybe down the road, right now. That's the way I think about it. And I just encourage all of you to think about it exactly the same way.
I also think it emphasizes the importance of civil service work, right? And just how important it is for us to be in those positions in federal agencies, right? To help in making the decisions around policy solutions that impact our community. Being that voice to talk about the challenges that are there, the opportunity, to talk about the research, et cetera. But just emphasizing that we all know that it's important, and we hope to see more of that kind of diversity across the U.S. Among leaders at the highest level. So to wrap up and to close out, Chairwoman, what initiatives and/or rulemakings are you excited about for the upcoming new year, and how will these initiatives and/or rulemakings benefit Black digital access?
Okay, I'm going to make an effort to talk about something I haven't talked about before. And that's the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP. We're not good at branding in Washington. We just like give things letters left, right, and center. But ACP is historic. It's the nation's largest ever broadband affordability program. The FCC runs it, and we have been able to use the ACP to help 21 million low-income households in this country get online and stay online. You have Medicaid, you rely on SNAP, you've got a child who gets free and reduced lunches at school, you have a Pell Grant, you qualify. We can help spend $30 a month for your broadband. We have households in this country that are using this that would otherwise not have access to broadband. Because again, it's an essential service. And if you want to attack the digital divide, this is especially true for Black America. It is not only about deployment.
Right.
Let's also understand in some cases it's about affordability.
Right.
And so ACP has been a really tremendous tool to address that. And the only thing that I would say is that Congress funded it, didn't make it permanent. We're going to run out of funding for ACP at some point next year. And I would just say that it's something that I hope the Joint Center can take a real look at, because we've done so much good with this program, we can't stop now. And we need Congress to continue to appropriate and fund and support it.
Any other kinds of initiatives or work that you're excited about coming up?
Stay tuned.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chairwoman Rosenworcel, for your outstanding service and work. Really appreciate working with you and for you being here today to talk about some important topics, and appreciate everybody for listening.
Thank you.